Hello and welcome to the CJ Scott. We're so excited to have you joining us right now and right over here. Well, I say right now because different people will get to watch this at different times and different people in different time zones. So I don't know what time it would be for you, but we're glad that you are tuned in here. I am CJ Atem, I'm your host. And as always, we've got the panel. The jury is right over here. The verdict always is yours. You decide what side you will be on once we are done. But you don't even have to limit yourself to waiting till we are done before you bring out your verdict. You need to engage us. So first of all, please share the stream, invite your friends to watch, whatever you need to do, get some other people getting on, and then let us get your engagements as well. Feel free to comment, to like, and to share. Today we are talking about cancel culture, and when I first sent out this to my assistant, she asked me, what is that? And when she sent out that to the guests, several of them asked, what is that? According to the pop culture dictionary, cancel culture refers to the popular practice of withdrawing support for mostly public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered offensive. But is it just with the public figures or companies? I think that we meet this every day in one way or the other. To help us go through this conversation, to my father's left, I've got Chris Sakwa, who is an HR consultant. Good to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've got Roselyne Wanjiru, who is an economist, among the many hats that she wears. Very recently, I was hosting her on a different topic, and then when she mentioned director, I said, you know, in my mind, directors have got gray hairs and they sit in just to get allowances and then they go. But of course, times have really changed. So we've got Roselyne Wanjiru. She's not new to us. She's an economist, a financial analyst, among many things that she does. Then we've got James Mahmi, one of those controversial people you'll always have, or rather very vocal people. No. But he's the director of Ignition. Ignition Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. What does Ignition Africa do for somebody who's hearing about it today?
We do leadership development and empowering young people in communities, building capacity. So we do capacity buildings in communities, especially to young people who can now influence their culture.
All right. Yes. All right. Talking about cancel culture, and maybe, Chris, I need to start with you. The latest case that we had around, if we start from the point of just dealing with celebrities and something, before we come down to the everyday life, because people get canceled even in their families. Sure. Yes, you just ostracized completely. But when we talk about the case like the one that happened, the most recent was the one of the radio station, where a sponsor had to come in and say, we didn't like the content that was being aired and the discussion that was being driven. And so you've got to do something about your employees. And so the radio company had to actually let go of their employees because the sponsors were not happy and all of that. From an HR perspective, just break down that for me.
Okay, so organizations operate not in a void, but they operate with many stakeholders. Right. And of course, most of the focus ordinarily would be on the customers. If the customers are happy, the organization is probably happy. But if organizations have stakeholders that come in the form of sponsors, partners, and they are the ones literally paying whatever it is you're doing, they're the ones paying you, really. You then need to get to that point where you know how to manage your stakeholders. So you want to come forth as having pacified if you must. You want to come forth as having followed procedure and done everything that needs to be done. And so you may have the best, in the instance of the radio station you just referenced, you may have the best presenter and you really want them still to continue doing what they're doing. But the guy who pays your bills is saying, we are not going on with this guy. Let go of this person. So from a HR standpoint, you have to make the decision on whether you want to continue receiving this sponsorship and support, or if you can do without it, if you must maintain your presenter. And so when you are pushed to then make a decision to let go of this person, now it becomes critical for you then to follow procedure, because there are laws that would also govern how exactly you want to let go of this person. Of course, I have my reservations about how this issue was handled. It probably would have been handled differently, but you must follow the laid down procedures. The Employment Act is clear on how you can let go of persons. How do you do that? Have they failed to perform on their contract? Was it explicit what they can discuss or cannot discuss? If that's what was not there, then you probably have to even reach an agreement. In some instances, even talk to the employee for them to opt out, as opposed to you now pushing them out. Because again, it goes to affect your brand as an employer. So many things at play that you must really balance for you then to come forth as having done a good job as a HR practitioner.
Yeah. Most of those people today, before I come to you, Roselyne, James, because you've also had background in media, today people will pick up anybody that seems to be influential and want them to either push a brand, do endorsements. They may not have checked the character, the foundation of this person, the values, the beliefs of this person, whether they do merge with their company. And then you get to a certain place, this person does something crazy. And you decide, we are canceling our contract. But you generally knew that it is this behavior actually that caused this person to get the influence in the first place. Is that fair?
Well, one thing, it is not fair, but one thing I can say is, you know, most people who are celebrities and probably comedians and content creators on YouTube, some of them are not versed with media laws, and especially those laws that relate to the public. And sometimes they get the influence without the knowledge of how they should relate to the public. Now, you see, at the moment when a company is coming to engage someone, that company is only looking for what they can get from that particular person. It is not looking for their values and their moral standards, and they are looking for the influence. And one thing that I was discussing with him is that most people don't care who you are. They only care what you have. So most companies actually, when they are looking for sponsors, I've been on media for quite some time. Even for me, when people want to gain access to my influence, or probably to the audience that I have, they don't care who I am. They don't care the things that I do in my closet, or the content that I'll post tomorrow. Right. They only care about the influence they will get. And one thing that happens with influence, the science of influence, is that when you get influence and when you have a huge following, those who don't have influence, they will come to you to gain access to your following so that it may push their brand. Not necessarily because of you, not necessarily because of what you posted last year. So the probabilities that you might even have posted something that is so bad yesterday, but because they care about today and tomorrow, they'll pick you in as their brand ambassadors. But when it comes to a point of pulling out, what happens is that what he said about HR, when now a client or probably a company now sees that you have done something that is out there in the public domain, and probably the public is not happy. And for the case of the issue that happened recently on radio, women were not happy because of the things and the sentiments that were expressed by the radio presenters. It might not have been that bad, probably, but because they went on Twitter, they went on Facebook, and they started shouting all over. Now, the companies decided we are not associating with those people, not because those people are bad, but because there is what they targeted has been affected, and it will affect their sales if they continue associating with those people. So you see that sometimes companies are sometimes hypocritical, especially when they are withdrawing their...
And I was going to ask you that, because you said that initially they will not consider who you are, like your values or something. Then the interesting fact is that they will still use those very values to invalidate whatever they were.
It's hypocrisy.
Because don't you think, if I want to deal with James, and I know he has the numbers, then I need to also look at what does James represent. so that I don't introduce a different parameter when I need to cancel out this. And James is like, but this is who I am. This is what I do. You know, I know one celebrity who has hit about nearly 4 million on Insta, and she's very aggressive right over there. There are some people who have actually pushed their products through her, but somebody else will feel, no, I don't like her personality. This person is too tough for us. But others have embraced the whole person. If you're going to come up later on and say, I don't like how James acts, isn't that something to consider from the very beginning, Roselyne?
Yes, you need to, because you can't act like these things don't exist. Actually, if you act like they don't exist, then you're already in the wrong. And it's just that if you want to get into an arrangement or agreement with someone, you lay your cards on the table. You want the numbers, just as James has mentioned, and this person actually wants the pay that they're going to get out of that. So you have to do a cost-benefit analysis, that it's going to cost me this if I deal with this person. If, in fact, if you ignore the risk, you're the one you've already messed yourself up, because I can't expect you to be a certain thing or represent certain things if you consistently do not and have publicly mentioned that you do not stand for those things. It's actually very wrong, and as I said, hypocritical, because even within looking at influencers, you have different categories. So you can go for the nano influencer, the one who has between 1 and 5,000 followers. You can go for, there's a nano influencer, there's a micro influencer, one who has maybe 5 to 10,000. It depends on the numbers. You have to consider all these factors.
Kind of influencer, yeah.
Exactly. And you go, yes, exactly. As it goes with influence, you have to be strategic about what it is you want to push, because if you act like these issues will not happen, you're actually setting up yourself for failure. That's a fact. So you can't just decide that, oh, I'll ask you to push my product, and hey, but they don't mess me up. Okay, just don't mess me up, because I will cancel on you when you mess me up. Yeah, yeah.
You know, as you say that, as you're talking about the different influences, yeah. I will just mention this. I saw a post one time on Instagram by a Akode, and she said that not everybody who has a huge following is an influencer. Exactly. And I found that to be very interesting. Yes. And she was saying, you know, companies, if you go out over there and get your product pushed, there are some people who may have 100 followers.
Yes.
But they're greater influencers than some people who may have so many.
Yeah, huge following.
So sometimes we get hooked to the numbers.
Yes.
As long as so-and-so has 100,000 followers, so we think they will push the product. Then they get over there, and as James said, they don't even know the rules of engagement.
Yes.
You've not trained them, you've not taken them through anything, and then they get into this space, there's a mess, and now suddenly, everybody's pulling out.
Exactly. So, sorry to interject. Yeah. Now, in the online world, numbers can tell a different story. There's the proverbial saying that numbers don't lie, but in the age that we find ourselves right now, numbers can be made to lie. So I can come and tell you I have 100,000 followers. Me telling you I have 100,000 followers, you need to be able to ask, what's my engagement? What's the audience? I could have 100,000 bots. Now, bots are usually what you would call fake accounts, whereby there's nothing that actually stops me from creating however many accounts I want and make them my followers, because, and again with Twitter, you'll find that issue has been...
You create accounts to follow yourself?
Exactly. You know, the fake following, it's been such a huge issue, because I can come and tell you I have the numbers, and you will see that I have the numbers. But does that mean that I have the engagement that you need? Because I can have 100,000 followers, but it doesn't mean you will have 100,000 likes on your post. So like if I talk about your product and I tell you that I'm going to post your service or your show or promote whatever it is that you want for however long, the question is, what is my consistent engagement rate? Because even when you come back to social media metrics for companies, right now, if you really want solid analytics on even your own promotion, your own product promotion, not even talking about an influencer, you have to be very intentional about seeing what is your reach, what demographics, by age, how many, are you reaching younger people? Are you reaching older people? Are you reaching more women? Are you reaching more men? Because that is ultimately your target audience, right? So if I cannot tell you as an influencer that this is my audience by definition and by certain numbers, that this is their age range, this is the maybe gender placement by location. Let's say I want a more urban audience than a rural audience, then I should be able to tell you that, not just tell you I have 100,000 followers and like let's do business based on that.
All right. Yeah. So I want to bring in something very interesting. For example, in the case that we talked about initially, Chris, the complainant, would they have the moral ground to question somebody else's morality, especially bearing in mind what their product is as well? I'm trying to bring up something here, like sometimes even the companies themselves, they're not like totally clean. But then I find Chris with a mistake and I demand, we want Chris out. But we ourselves are not above the slate. Isn't that the hypocrisy James was talking about?
It sure is. It sure is. Be that as it may, the truth also is these organizations want to push numbers, ultimately. And where are these numbers going to come from? From the customers, the consumers out there, who probably are not feeling as good about us sponsoring someone that in their opinion is violating their very beliefs or is going against what the norm would be. And so you find yourself now becoming a hypocrite for the moment because you are driving a longer agenda, a long-term agenda. I mean, you must retain these persons. So again, like the Swahili saying goes, mwamba ngoma uvutia kwake. You know, you definitely want that side to look good and disregard what you probably would be advancing that other people may feel. You have a log in your eye, please. Don't tell us about that speck. You know, so you for the moment want not to consider the log in your eye, do what you must do for your own sustainability as an organization. So, I mean, we as human beings, and I stand to be corrected, I want to be very controversial with this, are very mean, especially when things concern ourselves. We want the best for us before we think about others. And so we would find ourselves being hypocritical to that extent and get away with it anytime.
There's something that I've been seeing of late, generally, like when you have an opinion about something, you are quickly branded about your opinion. Like it's becoming harder and harder to just have objective debates and arguments and talk. So if I say something, for example, that is political, I'm quickly sized, are you in Tanga or the other side? You make a statement in one thing, are you a misogynist? Are you this? We always trying to just put people in certain spaces, which then sometimes will hinder people from expressing themselves. And it doesn't mean that it has changed their views concerning something. Then somebody would, like in the case we talked about again, raise up a conversation and say, can we talk about both sides about this? Even without expressing an opinion, we quickly will come up and brand this person, you are this kind of a person, and so you need to go. Where is the place of open talk in our society right now?
I think the society has really has really changed, especially when everyone has an opinion and everyone thinks they know the right thing. But at this particular age and time, it only takes people who are not cowards to move on. Because if you are a coward, you will refrain from expressing your own views on social media. I saw one of your recent views that you expressed on TV, and it was posted, and people were there giving their different opinions. and I will demand.
I don't even ever go back. Once I put my views, I don't even go check.
It was picked by a national television, posted on social media, and I was reading through the comments, and I was saying,
man, I didn't know that I made it. Look, I'm an influencer. Please bring your products.
It was about women submitting, and you said that even when a woman has has prospered economically, they still expect a man to lead them. They still need a man to lead them. So men were giving their opinions, women were giving their opinions, and everyone was on a different lane. So you see, if you are a coward, you'll not say that. But people who are not cowards should always express their views, no matter who comes against them. And that is one thing that now hinders the influencers from trying to express themselves freely. And sometimes it takes strength and courage to try new things. If they backfire, then you pay the cost of that and learn from the mistake and move on. Because sometimes a wrong in Kenya cannot be a wrong in the US. It just depends on the moral standard of the society. So you see that most of the people who take in brand ambassadors, they rely on the moral standard of that society. So an influencer can do something wrong. In Kenya, we see it as a wrong, but if they travel to Uganda, it's not a wrong. Right. So what do companies look at? The companies are always looking at the public. What is the public saying? Whatever the public will say, the company will move to the side of the public. Not that they hate the influencer, but they spare them for another time. When this person works on whatever, on their image and comes back, they'll still use that particular person. Yeah. But as long as the public is tweeting and saying no, like one musician who kicked a woman at an airport, and the government acted because the public was speaking.
That's cancel culture right there.
Yeah. The government acted because the public was speaking. Yeah. But if the women were not speaking and they remained quiet, the event and the gig will go on as usual.
Well, I know this one has nothing to do with gender, but I just want to ask this. Roselyne, I'll give this fair ground for you to be the one to answer this. Yeah. Is there a bias with when something affects women and when it affects men?
That's just absolute. No, really, as you can see, it's an active discussion, and I'll say it in this sense. My previous thought actually on this is that we have the concept of freedom of speech. Then there's the responsibility and aftermath that not a lot of people will weigh into the equation. Now that's one dynamic. The other dynamic is online versus offline discussions. You'll find that a lot of people will speak about certain issues online very passionately or repeatedly and without fear of contradiction. Things that they would not speak about offline, or even if they would speak about them offline, it's within closed circles. So, for instance, let's pick the issue of GBV. Last year, it was reported that GBV cases went up by at least 30%, and every week in the news, you're seeing someone has been hurt, killed, or beaten up, and it's terrible. That's a fact. Now, if you follow the discussions as they would go, then you realize that there are different representations of this issue. Someone that you would say has been personally affected by GBV will definitely be vocal about such an issue, whether it's online or offline, because they know the impact that this particular issue has had on their life, right? Now, when you talk about now issues to do with women, and if there's a bias, then yes, definitely there's a bias. And if we break it further down to is this person getting help? Are they in trouble? Or is it just someone who is, ranting online without any association to the issue at hand? And again, I think one of the worst things that is to do with online discussions especially is that you have people who have never been affected by an issue who will treat it trivially. Now, at the point that you read this comment that this person has made a joke about it, and you have been personally affected, your responses are not the same, but that will not show in that comment section. So that's why we tend to have such wide variances, even in terms of a response, that why would this happen? Why should it happen? Who is handling? Who is doing anything about it? And you see, just as Mahmi would say, that the government will respond out of a level of public pressure. So how do you quantify public pressure versus your personal opinion? Because again, you find situations whereby an individual's opinion, yes, they do have the right to say certain things as a constitutional right because of freedom of speech. However, the aftermath, they're not in control of that. because if if an organization responds based on its policies and processes, at that point you're held responsible for the things you said. You can't say at that point, I said this because I had freedom of speech, but you're not willing to own up for the consequences that come after. So it just has to be a check and balance that, yes, have your opinion, that's all right. Don't be ignorant of the aftermath of your so-called opinion, because it doesn't absolve you of responsibility.
But okay, I'll break it down now to the level of everybody else, every day.
Yeah.
Somebody's caught up in a situation. They expect their friends. Now let's leave alone influencers and companies. They expect their friends to stand up for them. And then the friends and family just go quiet. Nobody wants to associate with you anymore because they feel their own opportunities, their own image will be at risk. So in a sense then, we also have cancel culture at communal levels, family levels, and at friendship levels. So there's a scandal or something has come up, you are trending for whatever reason, people are not happy with you. Then suddenly you see all your friends, Chris, are quiet. What informs that kind of behavior that we have? Because here, there are no numbers to push, there are no profits to push, there's no...
I think that would probably reference what Mahmi talked about earlier, context. What in our society or in a certain space is acceptable? What is moral in a certain society? And we all want to identify with the good anytime.
Even if we
identify with the bad and the radical. And
even if we do the bad, in public we want to identify with the good?
Definitely. Let the closets be. But in public we definitely want to really identify with the good. And we always will portray ourselves as good.
Right, right.
I mean, we are not saying we are without sin, but I mean we are talking about Chris here.
But we are, at least we have managed ours.
So let's handle Chris.
We have managed,
you know, and so we within that space would want to naturally identify with the good and never the bad. And interestingly, even when you talk in business circles, a happy customer would refer you to probably 3 or 4 other persons.
Right.
A dissatisfied one will ruin your image to about 23. So when it goes bad, we really want to go bad as well, you know. But when it's rosy and working and it's good, we want to flow. We want to identify with this. So, Chris, if today we are a family and you go against the norm or the expectation of the family and do something that is not representative of our family, if we are not bold enough to sit you down and talk about it, we will distance ourselves from you. It's nothing that is rocket science. It's with us, it's the norm, but we find ourselves.
I think in the context of family,
right, and friends and all that,
and friends, people pretend. Because when you are close to someone, probably your family member, most of them, they will not run away from you. They will not reject you as their family member. They still love you. But what happens is now associative thinking. Because when you now begin associating with this other one and this other one, and you feel they begin now saying, because the majority don't like the issue, I don't want to associate with him so that I appear like I am supporting. But in their hearts, probably they may not reject you.
But that's what he said about even the companies. Like he said, even with the companies, it's not like they don't like you. And you said that yourself.
Sure.
He said it's not that they don't like you.
And the other thing is this, Mahma, sorry for interjecting. The other thing is this, it's temporal.
All right.
At that point,
it's not permanent. Today we may be so against you and probably not want to associate with you, but like he's saying, your family. I mean, deep inside we know you cannot become ex-brother.
But the damage, because for example, sorry Roselyne, but for example, the opportunities at that particular point that certain opportunities have certain time spans that they exist within. So I lose certain things within that period.
Correct.
As much as you're saying you will come back and family, but the damage that will have been done, the trauma sometimes, just the feeling of when I needed you the most, you were my family, you were my close friends, I needed you the most at that particular point, that moment will never come back. What happens there, Roselyne?
Now, the fact is that betrayal, whether it's corporate or personal, it's betrayal and it hurts. So it depends on the bond that you have. If we were pretending, that's, it's over and done, because I knew you guys would betray me anyway. You would not I mean, if I know you don't have my back and, a scandal pops up, or I'm in trouble, or I've been even wrongly implicated, because, I love the story of a lady who once was, she was an accountant. I don't remember her name, but the story really stuck with me. And she was in prison for about 2 years before her case could be cleared out. Coming back to to her society, her family, it took so long because she's a prisoner. I mean, how bad can it get? This person is prison record, so we'll be looked at like we're criminals and all that. Now, she shares her journey in rebuilding that. She had to, of course, establish new friendships, new relations, and just find her way back into a healthy space. But for a very long time, at least 10 years, she couldn't really associate with her family. As you're talking about the aftermath, yes, we as individuals need to be very mindful of that, because when you're the one on the hot seat and your name has been tarnished, your reputation has been damaged, you, of course, will need people to support you. But sometimes you will find, not even that you will expect, the strangers, so-called, that were never there are the ones who believe in you, and they take a chance on you. You can walk with that, you can run with that, and you will rebuild yourself. But now, as it relates to the, really the wider culture, as Mahmi pointed out, it's that, have these people been pretending? That, of course, will hurt more. But if you know that there's at least 1 or 2 people who have had your back, let those ones be the one to support you back into a space where you will heal and, reestablish new relations.
There's also this aspect of sometimes people will publicly look like they're with you.
Yes.
But then they've got their own private WhatsApp group.
Exactly.
Where they're like, I always knew.
They would mess up. It's so messy, because we have digital dynamics and social dynamics that tend to clash very badly sometimes, because, as you said, this person goes behind your back and screenshots WhatsApp, forwards your messages, and they literally expose you. They undress you before people who don't even know you, and you wonder, what does this person who is doing this have to gain from that? Because if truly they know you, then they should be able to protect you. And the best thing that they can do, if they're really acting in your interest, is actually just stay quiet and keep supporting you without necessarily now trying to gain leverage. But we have people who are looking for fame online, and as they say, the bad news sells, controversy goes as far as it will, and someone will want their 15 minutes of fame. So it's an unfortunate dynamic that we need to be conscious of, that someone in your circle will want fame based on what happens to you.
All right. James, there's this flip side to it. On the one hand, we've got the issue of, when somebody has done something wrong, we really go against them. On the other hand, there's the element of the person who has done something wrong, not understanding that they've done something wrong. So anything you point out, they feel it's an attack. So they say haters and critics. So they never really see the need to correct anything. They never face the mirror and accept and say, look, it's true. I was wrong on that. What are people supposed to do with it?
Well, when it comes to that particular point, now it comes to the level of consciousness and self-awareness. And now that one is personal development. Now, for someone to get at that particular point, they have to bear to accept the damage that it comes with. Because some people are unconscious. They don't know they are doing the wrong thing. And the public, sometimes even the public, I've been watching a particular gospel musician who nowadays sings secular music. And the public has been on his case. Every day they are trying to comment, and they are telling them, whatever you are doing is not right. Even those who don't know God, they are trying to tell him, hey, Mazebana, hey, we don't like the way you are doing things. But you see, this particular person is in deception, and they think they are doing the right thing, probably by gaining negative publicity. And now it takes a self-aware person to know that what I'm doing is not, or will affect me at this particular point, And if someone doesn't get to that level of consciousness, then he'll not get to the level of self-regulation. Now, if you are not in the level of self-regulation, you cannot you cannot now be able to influence the public, because as much as sometimes people, celebrities or people who go high in power, view the public as a Wanjiku or as a common mwananchi, you know, those terms are used to refer to lower people in society. But these lower people in society, they are able to see things that you are not able to see.
Right.
So sometimes you have to check out the responses of the community around you, the people around you, the fans around you, and see what really benefits me and what doesn't work for me this particular time. But it needs a very high level of self-consciousness and emotional intelligence to know that. But in case you don't have consciousness, then you stand to lose. And that's how people have lost influence. There are people who are influential. And one thing that I usually tell, especially celebrities, even media personalities, some popularity is like wind. Sometimes it can pass on you and go to another person. If you don't know how to use it correctly at that particular time so that you remain relevant for some time, and if you don't know how to move into seasons very fast intelligently, you'll always find yourself on the loose.
And talking about that thing of some who ride on the negative publicity, so there are people who actually create it.
Yes.
The people who create it, they want it, they'll expect it. If nobody knows what they did, then they will leak it out so that they can build up on their numbers, because in their thinking, as long as I have the numbers, as long as I am trending, I am going to benefit from it. Are we totally then losing our humanity and our sense of, you know, our sense of, what would I call, we're losing humanity and our sense of moral values just because we want to become this thing that is called an influencer?
I would probably agree to an extent, yes. But again, just like we said, it's, I think using the word humanity really takes it a notch higher. Let's probably just talk about it being a certain society.
That's taking it too far.
I think that's, because like Mahmi said earlier, I mean, what would be a wrong in Kenya may not be a wrong in the US. So when you talk of humanity, maybe a different conversation. But within that space and that society, we have got to a point where we have an insatiable appetite for fame, for being a celebrity, for being an opinion shaper. So we really want to do everything we must do to get there, and probably even make every attempt to sustain it. And like he has said, if you do not know how to manage that wind while it's on you, or that focus, you're on set, the camera is on you. If you do not know how to do what you must do and do it right at that point in time, you'll be so irrelevant without knowing it. The spotlight shifted. You're still doing your thing. But if you know how to manage that, and I like what he has also brought in, emotional intelligence, very, very critical, which is just two aspects: manage, understand self-awareness, self-regulation, appreciate the other person, manage relationships. Just that. If you are able to hack that, then in any circumstance, even when you feel like you want to do those wrong things, you definitely want to think about the people around you. How will this impact them? Will they be with you? Will they cancel you? If you already have that awareness, you know your team, you know your people, then you probably will do things differently.
And I think humanity has always been faced with two options. Yeah? You are confronted with two options. You choose one. There is good prosperity, there is bad prosperity. There is good popularity, there is bad popularity. So you choose this day who you want to serve, because bad popularity has a time span. And if someone wants to eat for 10 years and die, I worked with someone on radio who wanted to die at 30 years, and God was gracious to him. So you see that there are people who sometimes they don't care what they get in life. As long as they are getting whatever they want to eat that particular time, they choose that. And they have their judgment coming on them. And probably those 10 years will end and they want to expect more, and the spotlight shifted. That's the sad reality.
You're going to say something.
Yeah, actually, just building up on what he raised, it's not that we're losing our humanity, but we have very high intolerance, because you remain humane for as much as you're aware, really. And when someone wrongs you, then you act like this person should never have wronged you. You need to check yourself. Is it that, as we hear it, human is to err, that this person is supposed to be perfect and never wrong you? So the question is, how do we define relationships? How do we define our interactions with people? How do we define the weight that we accord to different voices in our life? Because if a stranger tells me something, and if a friend tells me something, or if a person close to me, a very close friend or my best friend tells me something, it'll come to my personal space in a very different way. And at the end of the day, you have to be aware enough within yourself, whether you are the counselor or counselee, whether you're the one counseling or you're the one on the receiving end. It's that human nature is tends to be predictable at some instances. When someone is scared, they will do something. When someone is afraid, they will do something. If someone is in survival mode, there's a way that they will act. You can't expect this person not to act that way because they are human and they have certain limitations. That's a fact. So if you want, or you want things to go a certain way, you either prepare yourself and cultivate that, or just resign yourself to fate, because the fact is that people will disappoint you. People will violate your expectations. But the question is, how do you recover from that? How do you get back to a space that's all right? You know that there is intolerance. So how do you navigate that? Because if you act like it's not there, you're the one who's setting up yourself for failure.
All right. Well, we're talking about cancel culture, and since our time is just getting over, I'm going to take the final thoughts from our jury right now. But I want to hear your own thoughts. Remember to follow us also on social media at CJ Scott on Facebook, CJ Scott 1 on Twitter, and then CJ Scott official on Instagram, and CJ Atemo, the YouTube channel. That's where you need to subscribe. You know that thing of subscribe to my YouTube channel? Yeah, you go ahead and subscribe right now. I'll take the final thoughts. I'll begin with you, Chris. The final thoughts.
My final thoughts are this. Looking at cancel culture, I would probably position it as something that would either be for me giving or receiving. So whichever way I'm looking at it. And I want to borrow heavily from Daniel Goleman, who's an authority in emotional intelligence. He says that we are of two minds as humans. We are of the rational mind and the emotional mind. And both are important, and they get to play their role. And in instances where you have to make a choice between fighting and fleeing, the emotional mind most of the times would take charge. So if you did something wrong emotionally, I would react, respond, and do what probably, if I had rationally thought about it, I wouldn't do. And so before I do anything as an individual, whether I'm about to be controversial in seeking negative publicity, I probably need to consider, am I at the whims of the emotional mind or the rational mind? If I'm responding to someone something has done, which one is playing itself out and which one ought to have? So I think if you had those considerations, we would balance out life, my take.
All right. James.
Well, I think that as long as we're in this world, people will always take advantage of other people. And we need to understand that companies, families, even in our communities, that people will always want to identify with what is popular. Now, it is very important for us to understand the moral standard of our society and play our game on that particular moral standard, especially if you want to be an influencer. In this particular age where everyone is a content creator, I think the definition of content, was lost. Even those influencers should now begin thinking of posterity, because I've seen musicians and content creators in quotes who have come on YouTubers who have tried to create content that has no posterity in it, and they have failed. So we need to have that conscious, especially with our desires. Right. If we don't know how to turn desires into awareness, then we'll find that our egos will always pick those desires and begin now playing around them, and then we get disappointed at the end.
All right. Yeah. Well, normally it's say ladies first, but today it's got to be the lady last. Roselyne.
Thank you for that. Well, mine will be simple, and it's this: always be honest with yourself. Be honest to the extent about what's going on within you, what's going on around you, because what's going on around you could affect what's going on in you. And if you miss that balance, then there will always be conflict. But as long as you know what's going on within you and you're able to keep a check on that, having the emotional integrity, having the intellectual integrity to stick to certain values, then you'll be able to navigate the murky waters of all these moving targets, because the fact is that human nature is to an extent predictable as much as it's unpredictable, really. So be always honest with yourself and stick to what is really going to serve you well in the long term.
All right. Well, the conversation is to continue, so let's hear your engagement even as you go on and as you share the stream and as you watch on later. Let's hear your thoughts and your comments in the comment section. So go right over there and tell us what you think. That's all the time that we have had right here on CJ Scott. I'm your host, CJ Atemo, and until next week, keep it right here.